You always manage to surprise us with your films. I mean, it's one thing we can be guaranteed with a Danny Boyle film is that it will be completely different to the last thing you've done. I actually saw Sunshine, your last film, not too long ago, really, and I had no idea I was watching a Danny Boyle film until the end credits roll, and I caught your name, and I mean, I was stunned. I mean, it was a good film and all, but it wasn't what I was, expecting Danny Boyle to be doing. So I guess what I'm wondering, first of all, is how on earth do you go from sort of a sci-fi apocalypse to an epic on the streets of Mumbai? How did
With great relief. Sci-fi is extraordinary. How controlled it is.
Yeah.
It's so precise. You just no idea until you start doing them. And it's isolated and very cold in a way. And kind of, because you literally are, in order to create them, you literally are like those astronauts. You're out there on your own with a small group of people for an inordinate amount of time trying to kind of create this out of space. Everybody judges so critically. It is weird because audiences, of course, don't know the first thing about outer space, but they do.
Yes.
And they really judge you much more tougher than in almost any other genre I've ever worked in.
They've got their DVD collection. They know what it's all about.
Absolutely, yeah. So, of course, to go to Mumbai, you cannot have any control there. You've got to work in a completely different way. All those rigid things that you normally focus on as a director, you have to jettison, like repetition and continuity and control and the ability to change things to your preference, the minutiae. Forget it. You can spend 90% of your budget doing that if you want, but it'll be crap.
So really, in a way, even though a lot of people are now sort of saying, well, he did his big mainstream, larger-than-life film, and now he's sort of going back to sort of smaller indie films, it sounds like, in one way, Sunshine was actually a smaller film in terms of the creative process and the technical process, and that this one's almost, bigger.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. It's just an enormous film. It's kind of, and although we didn't have that much money, if you work there in the right way, Epic is given you for free. There's 1 billion people there, which is enough people for a planet, let alone, if you were starting up a medium-sized planet somewhere in the universe, you'd go, 1 billion people, that sounds like a good round number. Yeah. And there's 1 billion there, so it will have that epic. If you let them in, which is obviously the technique that we used, it's going to feel epic, really. And the city also has a dynamism that's like New York, It's just or like New York used to be. It's just extraordinary. Its identity, and you have to remain open to that identity and let it in. And we wanted to do that. We wanted the film. Our judgment was always realism, as I said, but it was also the feeling that we would include as much of the city as we could, in all these forms, and that meant this incredibly chaotic assembly of different styles, almost in a way, and different instincts, because the city is a mixture of, you see terrible things, and then you see these extraordinary, so you have a scene of a kid being blinded, deliberately, and then you have a dance sequence at the end. And people go, how can you smoothly get from one of those things to the other? You can't. That's not possible, but the city doesn't either. The city just has them both.
So, I was going to ask before then, did you have an interest in India before this? But it sounds like it's been quite an eye-opener. Just making the film was quite an experience for you in that way.
Yes, and I love that feeling of starting again, because you literally cannot go there thinking, I know what I'm doing. You have to think the opposite of that. You have to think, to be really genuinely, to get the best from it, you have to start right from the beginning again. And they say embrace the contradictions in India, because if you try and resolve them, if you try and rationalize them, your mind will just explode with a migraine. It's not the way to approach it. And of course, that's what directors do all the time. That's your kind of job in trade, really. But I love the fact that it opened me up much more,
Sounds like you've got to sort of have the classic Indian sort of hippie cliche almost.
No, I know. And I hate hippies. Well, I don't hate them, but I'm not a hippie. I was a punk, But in terms of India, they're right,
Okay, interesting. I haven't been there, so it was definitely an eye-opener for us. I guess here in Australia, unfortunately, we don't have a great sense of India. I suppose the horrible irony of recent events. Your publicity team must have a wicked smirk on their face. But so now we're interested in Mumbai. But until the last couple of weeks, we really are quite culturally, absolutely very ignorant here. I mean, I found it quite an eye-opener, and I mean, I was just so thrilled that a studio didn't get their hands on it and decided to set it somewhere else, and and turn it into an American story. So I mean, I think that was that was great. Was there? I mean, in that way, it seems a remarkable film to be made because it is so sort of left of centre. I mean, how did you come to get in contact with the script and to be the one who made it?
They sent it, and they said it's a film about who wants to be a millionaire. And I thought, well, that's one I don't have to read. I don't want to do that. And I wouldn't have read it. I really, genuinely wouldn't have read it if I'd not noticed that Simon Beaufoy's name was on it. And I didn't know him personally, but I knew he'd written The Full Monty. And I thought, well, God, I should read a bit of that at least. And then I started reading it. And I kid you not, 10, 15 pages in, I was completely overwhelmed by it. And I knew that I was going to make it. I didn't care what the rest of it was like. You just know. I've had this once before, and I had it on Train Spotting, where I started reading the book, and I just thought, after page one, I just thought, this is it. We're going to make a film about this. It's just, it's somehow you get kidnapped, really. Yeah. Your rationality, forget it. It just disappears. Yeah. You just think, this is it. Let's do this. And it doesn't make any sense, and I'm so grateful to it. And, and I think it was for the same for Simon, although he'd been there as a student, touring, doing a year, touring India, that kind of thing, when he was 20 or something. So, but I'd never done that. So for me, it was a baptism, a total baptism, and a great one because you start afresh, as I said. There's something wonderful about starting from the beginning each time, somehow.
Now, I was reading as well, which I found fascinating, was in regards to the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire sort of context. You actually got the rights to that because the company that produced the film is the guys that actually invented the show. Is that right? So you ended up not having to pay a cent for it.
It was one of these extraordinary coincidences that... Again, Indians, when you talk to them about this, they go, well, there you go, that's destiny. Yeah. That's how destiny works. Now, normally, an indie film like this, you'd never be able to, even if you could persuade them to let you do it, which you wouldn't, they'd be crawling all over you, they'd charge you so much that you couldn't afford it, for the music and things like that. We got it all for free.
It's incredible.
So it came about. Amazing coincidences. Destiny, it is written.
Yes. You're living the slogan. It's great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How is it, well, obviously it's going to be released in India.
Yes, we're right at this very moment, they're dubbing it into Hindi, a full Hindi version, which I'm going to go and see in about 10 days' time to check that it's okay. And it'll be in two versions. It'll be the version you saw, which is partial Hindi, mostly English version, which is released in the art cinemas, and then a full Hindi version for the mainstream crowd. Now, that will be interesting to see how that plays.
Have they left in the kiss?
Yes.
They have?
Yes. They do. It has started in India, right, in Bollywood. They do kiss, but it very much breaks down into two types, the girls who will do it and the girls who won't. And you have to ask the permission of the actress before you begin.
So they were all the actors that you used were, I mean, obviously they're Indian actors, but I mean, they actors based in India, then they weren't sort of...
Yeah. Apart from Dev Patel, who plays Jamal, the older Jamal. And I couldn't find him anywhere. I looked everywhere around the world, and all the young Bollywood actors who are 18, they all look like heroes. They all literally look like heroes. They've got big, muscly build, they're all in the gym. And it just looked wrong, and I thought, I want someone who looks like a loser, who looks like this show is going to chew him up and spit him out. Yeah. And because his strengths are hidden from everyone, and his agenda is hidden from everyone. And my daughter said to me, you should see this guy, Dev Patel, who's in Skins in London. And of course, Indian people, again, would go, there you go. He was right on your doorstep, you see. Yeah. And they'd go, there you go, it is written.
Well, look, I tell you what, I think it's a wonderful film. Actually, I was going to say in response to that I must admit I'm a bit of a hard-assed sort of indie dark sort of night, and I usually don't like films that are sort of fatalistic and sort of have that happiness to them, but I actually quite like this one, so maybe it really was written because for some reason...
That's a very good way of putting it. Aaron, I'm the same. I'm absolutely the same. There's something goes on sometimes that you just don't have full control of.
Absolutely. I tell you what, about 15 minutes in, I thought, oh no, this is going to be like, oh. And I mean, when it happened, I must admit, I was all very starry-eyed and twinkling. I walked out feeling very lovely. So there you are. So
terrific.
Thank you very much for talking to us today. And
it's a pleasure.
Absolutely, and good luck with it. It's a fabulous film.
Oh, thanks, Aaron.